Welcome back to our restoration project. Today we're going to go over all our lighting. So the lighting on these cars really is not as easy as it seems to get them restored back on your car and looking new and in acceptable condition. Really quite a process and a lot of hurdles to get through to get a nice looking light back to a good condition. A lot of what you see here is a lot of trial and error I've gone through over the past 4 years trying to get these lights restored. A lot of options on the market, and quite frankly, not a lot of good ones. So there's some things we can do to our original lights. If they're in fairly decent condition, we can actually bring them back to almost new condition. We do have some aftermarket supply on tail light lenses and front corner lenses. Some of them are pretty good and some of them are pretty terrible. We'll take a look at those and see what the different options are. Also the lenses in our headlights, another wide variety of qualities that are out there. We're going to take a close-up look at those also. So we're going to go over some restoration techniques that I've used on this car, see what we can do to get through it, break them all down piece by piece and take them outside and get them installed.
So I think the best place to start here is just let's take a quick overview and see what I've got here, what I think is acceptable condition and what would not be acceptable for a quality restoration. And there is no limit you can spend on these lights, by the way. They can literally break you trying to restore these things and get them to a high quality condition. So one of the first hurdles we're going to run into is going to be the lenses. I've already put together and assembled our front turn signals here. Let's look at those lenses and see what they are. On our front turn signals, what we're looking at here is a very high quality reproduction set made to exact OEM spec. They look exactly like the originals in every way. The correct color, the correct writing, everything about them is correct. The depth of clarity is really quite amazing on these, and so is the price tag that goes with it. I have put some other aftermarket lenses on these. I'd call it like a medium quality. None of the writing, none of the German writing or OEM spec would be on them. They look pretty decent, but a problem with these lenses is going to be how they fit, right? And it's going to be how they fit into this very complex bent shape around these lenses, and that's going to be the problem, really, with all our lenses on all four corners. These lenses here I bought from Aussie Sales, probably about 3 years ago, and they were really expensive then. I think they're even twice as expensive now. I'm not sure who else sells this exact set here, but you really got to look hard as far as what's available, what they're going to look like, and also the price comparison. If they're not very expensive, chances are they're not going to be a high quality lens. You can buy lenses on eBay that are advertised as decent quality, but buyer beware on those. I've sent so many sets of lenses back from different vendors that literally just exhausted with the whole process. All right, so that's our front lens set. That's what I'm going to recommend if you want a real high quality OEM look for your front lenses. I would go with those from Aussie Sales. Now this particular lens here, this is almost impossible to find anymore. This one I picked up about 4 years ago, also from Aussie Sales. This is a new old stock lens, so this is going to be our best comparison to quality and color and depth of clarity that we could possibly have to compare with any aftermarket lens that would be available. And as far as the tail lights go on these cars, especially the early years, the quality of the lenses, the color, depth of clarity, they got a lot of work to do to really catch up with the original OEM look on these. So this particular light here is all put back together already. It's already restored. So what we're going to do, we're just going to go over these briefly, and I've got one light left over here that is ready to put together. It's been restored. I'll show you how we assemble that and get it to turn out where you'll be happy with it. The restoration process for this one will be the same for all four. So now let's compare the new old stock lens with the freshly restored original lens and see if you can tell much of a difference there. So the one on the left is the new old stock lens. That's basically been sitting on a shelf for 50 years, 50 plus years, and then just polished up and put back in place there. And the one on the right here has been restored. So very acceptable condition. I think I can live with that until I either find a true new quality left-hand tail lens, or they really come out with a high-quality reproduction set that I can use as a match set. Now let's have a look with our new old stock lens comparison with this was the best high-quality aftermarket lens that I could find. And as you can see, the color, depth of clarity, and the quality of plastic is just really mediocre at best, I would say. Not very acceptable, I think, for a high-quality restoration, but you don't really have a whole lot of choices. Even our rear reflector there doesn't really reflect much in comparison to our original or our new old stock. So color, depth of clarity, and overall shine there, it just doesn't quite make it. The one thing about this lens I will give the manufacturer is that they did do it correctly. A lot of the lenses you'll see out there don't even look like the original taillight lens for these early cars. This whole section in here is completely wrong on most of them. But this one was put together correctly. I just wasn't happy with the color of the plastic. Alright, and then the real test really is going to be out in the sunlight, which is where our cars are going to be if we're at a concours or out to a Cars and Coffee event. That's really when it's going to show up. So the one on the left here, this is our new aftermarket replacement, and the one on the right here is our restored original. So definitely worth an attempt at restoring your originals if they're in passable condition. So our restored original will work for us for now. It's got a couple issues in there I'll have to live with, but as for temporary, I think it'll do just fine until we can manage to locate either a new old stock left lens for the car, or maybe a higher quality set comes to market here in the next couple years, and then we can review it at that time. So how I restored this lens, this particular lens was broken in 3 pieces when I tried to restore it. And the reason I tried to restore it is because the clarity on the new lenses I just couldn't live with. So I just gave it an attempt. It was just a trial and error thing. I glued the pieces back together with super glue, block sanded it, 600 grit, and then shot both sides with a urethane clear coat. And that urethane clear coat is what really brought it back to life. The color on this was so dark, didn't look like anything was possible to restore it. But once I shot that clear coat on there, it actually made it transparent again, brought the color right back around, very close to our original new old stock there, and very happy with the results. So a little clear coat, a little block sanding, and a polisher, you can be back in business. And then the other issue we're going to run into on all 4 corners of our case is going to be our chrome. So the chrome that's on this is original chrome. Believe it or not, it actually survived this car in all those years. It's in acceptable condition. It's not a high quality chrome like we're getting from advanced plating. And there's a very good reason why I never sent these in to have them re-chrome. So these lights are made from a pot metal, and very complex shapes, and a lot of inward detail in there. A lot of things would have to happen to dismantle them and get them ready for chrome. But the biggest enemy you're going to have with trying to re-chrome one of these original lights is they're made out of pot metal, and when you strip pot metal down, underneath the pot metal, you're going to have to rework the metal. And once they put it onto a polisher and start working these edges here, it's not going to take very long, particularly on these lights here, to start having the edge disappear. And that edge is very, very important to tucking in and fitment on your car. New aftermarket housings will not look anything like this. I really wanted to retain the original bulb holders, and original chrome really speaks quite a bit for the preservation quality of some of the parts on the car. It's really in quite nice condition. It's acceptable. It's not perfectly new, but if I sent this in for re-chroming, I don't know that I would be happy with the result, because some of this metal eventually will be disappearing around here. I don't know if I'd be able to work that out as far as fitting it goes. And once it's gone, that's it. It's gone. A real tough shape to re-chrome. Also, when they re-chrome it, the inside here is not going to shine up anyways. It's pretty much going to be dull, and you're going to have this kind of issue going on the inside anyways, even with a re-chrome. going to look like that. So what I did is I just masked off the outside area and shot the inside completely with a bright silver paint, kind of like we did on our gauges. And what that's going to do, that's going to help bounce light around. Once we turn our lights on, it'll help reflect through the lens and brighten everything up and give a little bit of a boost there as far as reflection goes. And then all our reflector pads, what I'm using there is a high temperature aluminum tape. So basically refoiling it, you can polish that up. When you put your lens back on there, you won't really be able to see anything in there. But when you turn that light on, you're going to get a real bright reflection off that polished aluminum. There is another resilvering or rechroming process that is available. I'm going to put a link in the video description box down below. A viewer shared it with me a while back, and a very interesting link. You have time, definitely check it out. The quality of the work that comes out of this shop in Germany is really remarkable. That is probably the only other thing we could do with these, is send them out and have that process done. So these lights are metal, so the process to do that is a little bit different than is if this with a plastic housing. So what they do is they do like a hydro type chrome. They spray it on, but you can't have a conductive surface. It's not like a traditional electrochrome plating process, polishing and all that. So you really have to have a proper polished surface to begin with first. If they are working with a metal surface, they'll have to put a non-conductive coating over the top of it, and then they can resilver it. So something like that might be an option for these type of lights. I imagine it would take quite a long time to send them out and get them back. The only worry I would have is the shipment on it, sending them out, getting them back, and having no issues. If one of these lights gets lost, you'll have to sell your house to get another one. That would be the only thing that would really worry me is the shipment on that. But the quality of work is available out there. It can be done. It's just a matter of what you're willing to go through. So let's go ahead and get one of these glued into place here. I'll show you what worked for me. A lot of different ways you could go about this, and a lot of different adhesives you could use. I'll just show you what I'm using here. I think it'll work fine in the long run. So the original design of our lenses had these protrusion tabs on there, and what that was supposed to do was to fit through these slots here. The only problem is they don't really fit and line up anyways. And also this lip here is really not the correct distance all the way around on your housing. So what's going to happen if you just go with it out of the box, you have a new lens in there, if you manage to get through your slots, it won't draw down all the way because it's going to hit that lip and bottom out on your case there, and then you're not going to get a real smooth fitment around there. You want to really try to get a nice flush inset look if you can get it. So what I did, as opposed to just going with it out of the box, here's my original. So I just took a die grinder and buzzed down this entire area. Just get rid of the tabs. You're going to have to buzz the rivet anyways and work that area. And so what can happen then is you can get an exact fitment and get it to line up much better than the factory had it from the beginning anyways, because they did stick up a little bit from the housing from the factory. So what we want to do, we want to just hot melt the center areas right here and right here. We're going to have to move quickly and then just hold that in place while the hot melt's going off. And then we'll flip it over on the back side and inject a hot melt in all these tabs. And that should hold it in place until we seal it with a caulking on the outside. So you can see the hot melt coming through there, so we got good contact. Next, we're going to take a latex-based clear caulking and use that to inject around the outer area all the way around. We're going to put it in there wet and then trowel it off with our finger, a damp rag, and that should give us a real nice seal and a real nice gasket in there. And also, it'll make it serviceable. If we ever have to take this lens off, we don't want to be fighting any kind of adhesive in here. We definitely want it to peel away, and that's going to work out fine for that. If you use silicone here, what's going to happen, you'll stick so well, you'll end up breaking your lens to get your lens back out of there if you ever have to get back inside to service it. Also, if you use silicone, what will happen when it's drying, it'll gas out inside the lens, inside the housing here, and fog up the inside of your lenses. And once it dries, you won't be able to get in there and tune that up. You'll lose your transparency. So whatever you do, don't use silicone to put these lenses in place. I would just secure them with the hot melt, seal it with our latex, use our screws to fasten from the ends, and that's not going anywhere. This way, if you ever have to get back in there, it won't be a problem. Just get a good unbroken line, squeezing it down in there. We'll get our best seal. And even though it's white now, when that dries, it will be clear. And it'll look very factory and have a real nice seal on there. While that's drying, let's take a look at our special screw set here that we need to install our lights with. So, got a real nice replacement set here from Stoddard, and how that works. It's got a rubber washer and a plastic retainer that slides over the end there. And the whole purpose of that retainer is to keep everything together while you're installing it into the car. So that's going to install into our speed nuts, which have to be greased and put into location. And it's really best to put these in, put your lens in, adjust everything out as best you can before we put the seal in there, just to make sure we can get it where we need to get it. Once we put that seal in there, it's going to change everything. We may not be able to draw it up depending on the location of our speed nuts. So the sleeve or washer we're going to be using to line the inside of that hole to draw our screw down. I'm using some brass ones here, and went through quite a bit just to try and find something that would work and be suitable size-wise. So this particular one here measures out at 3/16 outside diameter, and it's just the right size for a screw to go down in there. Managed to find other ones that were real close, but the screw won't go down in there. It goes through our lens no problem and looks real nice. Got a nice shoulder to ride the head of the screw on, but it's not big enough. The other problem is you find something that's big enough and everything's just, it won't go in at all. Also, if your hole in your lens is not quite big enough to match up with your sleeve, you can open that up with a very small micro round file. I would take a round file, something like this one right here, and just work that hole round and round until you get it big enough to put your sleeve in there. And these sleeves, I'm not cementing those in there. I just want those to be loose. I just need a metal edge so that our screw has something to ride on there without biting down in that plastic. If your sleeves aren't fit in the hole, I really recommend not running a drill bit down in there. If that gets a little bit of traction, you'll crack this lens and you'll be in a lot of pain. And then outside in the sun, there's our new old stock versus our restored original. Just squishing a little petroleum grease inside this flange here, and that'll help move it around when we need to place it really, really tight, especially now with the buildup of paint. Gently plugging in our electrical leads, not pushing them in all the way. We just need them to be tucked out of the way while we position our light, and there's no seal in here at this time. Well, I think that's going to work first time out, so it looks like everything's going to line up for us pretty much how we want to. The main thing is that we're flush here, that we're not proud, and that we're basically equal top and bottom and even all the way around, space to seal there. And then the other thing we want to look out for is how it's in relation to our fender here. So we don't want it sticking out, we don't want it proud from our fender, and that looks like it's going to work. So that means as long as our seal is put in position correctly, it will draw up and be okay. Also, see how it's tight here? We have a little bit bigger gap here. The design of the seal is really designed to take up those discrepancies, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to send these out for chrome. It would just exacerbate that if they took more off of the housing through polishing. There's a real sensitive detail here on these cars. So gluing in the seals on our housings, the fronts we're not going to have to. The rears we're going to have to do it just a little bit. So what I'm doing is putting just a little bit of super adhesive in the very bottom of this trough only on the ends, and very little on our seals. And then I'm just going to try and position that right in the middle and get it stuck down. We do not want to glue 100% of that seal in there. What will happen if we try to contact that whole thing, it won't draw down, it won't settle in to where it needs to be. They're a very complex design on the seal, and it really needs to move around, expand, squish, and settle in to get it where it needs to get. If you overglue it, then what's going to happen, it's not going to seat when we draw down our nuts. You'll try to overcompensate it not seating by tightening the nut too tight, and you'll crack a very expensive lens. And then once we have our ends stuck here and here, we're going to want to make a couple spots right in the middle here. Just using a reference mark there with a blue Sharpie and a tool to get that glue right down at the base. If the glue is sitting up on the side and the molding catches it on the way in, it won't seat. This will be our left tail light connections. And that'll be our left side fully seated. And this will be our right tail light wiring. And then when I'm screwing in, I'm keeping pressure into the light housing to take pressure off the screw, and then let it settle back up against the screw. This will be our right front wiring, and we're just pressing this seal in place, no glue. And there's our finished look on the right side. Okay guys, so there's kind of a long and detailed video on your front corner lights and rear tail lights. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you and keep you out of trouble. You get in pretty deep on these lights here. They can be very expensive and very sensitive to work with and easily broken. So our next video on part 2, we're going to go over everything headlights, all the details included in that, show you some really nice quality parts you can be using, show you some really terrible quality parts you don't want to use, and go over everything you need to know about them. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on part 2.